Hi.
How are you?
Oh my God, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for doing this. I know you're super, super busy.
Oh, well, it's the way it is these days.
You're in tech
Yeah.
right now. In fact, the actor you're working with just
Yes,
left the
these
house.
circles under my eyes are about 10 out of 12 techs. Well, not really 10 out of 12. 'Cause we're not really doing those anymore, are we?
Right, are we?
Sort of like 9.5 out of 12.
Exactly, 9.5, like whenever someone looks like they might be done.
Yes.
We can see that they're done.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's early morning, and we couldn't be on the porch, obviously, because it's raining,
Yeah.
which it will stop before showtime tonight.
I have a good story about raining.
Okay, please.
It's an APT story. It was one of my first stories, and I remember coming here early on. Miss Alliance. I can't remember the year because I'm terrible at that. But 2008.
Look at, she knows
That's
everything.
nice.
I couldn't tell you if it was in this
Wow,
decade or last.
2008. So not really in this decade.
You were 23 when you came here.
Come on.
I'm joking, but
That's
you look
awesome.
like it. You totally
I
look like
yeah,
it.
well, that those days are gone.
And we had something to do with that.
Yes, and you had something to do with it, definitely. But so you and David Frank said, there's magic at APT. There's magic in these woods, and you will find it. And I'm kind of a cynical person, right? And I was like, sure. But we were we were rehearsing in the veranda, which was that old rehearsal space up
Screened
there.
in porch.
Screened in porch.
Yeah,
right? And I was
basically.
like, where?
And that was a good space then.
It was a good space, and I was like, where am I? I'm in the middle of the woods. And I was working with an actor that I knew from Seattle, Dara Kennan. And,
Dara.
Dara. I can't say enough about him, and he's actually the reason I'm here, is he introduced us. But we're working, and he's playing this role of Gunner in Miss Alliance. It's a great role, and he's, we're working on a speech, and all of a sudden, a perfect Midwestern storm came over. And not to miss any opportunity to like really indulge in the drama, Dara rips into this speech from Gunner like it's King Lear. And, essentially he's like this pasty clerk who's coming in to, complain about his life. And all of a sudden with the rain like pelting down on the metal roof, and I just watched him like breathe in the space and become like King Lear in this moment. I'm like, what the hell is happening? And it was so thrilling. It was so thrilling to just the combination of like an actor's spirit and the outdoors and, the dialogue between nature and, language. And I didn't really get it at that time, but it, like reflecting back on it, I was like, what a perfect baptism for like being here at APT, like to see something, feel something like that.
Feel something, because I think you're right about, we always, when we're talking about how to let people know who we are, we're trying to figure out what's the marriage, how do you talk about the nature and then the nature of stories and acting specifically, because nature, if you're in the moment with nature, it's going to change in front of you, right? Just like when you're in the moment on stage at acting. And so if you put two actors on stage and then nature changes around them, you have like this multiple force field happening when they're acting.
Oh, so many. I mean, another moment that I'll never forget, like deeply in the DNA of like, being an artist or making theater. Christina Panfilio is on stage playing.
Brilliant. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Christina. Brilliant. Ophelia in Hamlet. And we are working on the mad scene. And very much like what's happening outdoors right now, there's lightning and thunder that creeps in. And as she is sort of delivering, in this production, we made a choice that she would have stones that she would think were the herbs that she had picked. Which she drowns, it leads, and she's gathering up all of these rocks and handing them out to her family. And she's walking over, I think it was the stage right rise, and well, look at that. Lightning and thunder as Ophelia walks to her death. And like none of us were like, we're not going to talk about it. We're just not, don't. I was on stage with David Daniel, I think, and Eric Parks, and we're all just like, just don't say anything. And she's walking up over the rise, lightning, thunder, and she keeps going, thunder, lightning, and we just sit there and we're like, wow, you could not have designed that collaboration better.
Right.
So.
I love those stories. I mean, I know everybody's like really, but you just, when you live them, they are.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. They are amazing. They're impactful. So that kind of leads it. I mean, the first question I was going to ask you is, when did you know you wanted to work at APT, or how did that happen?
Yeah, Darkennen.
Yep.
He's, like a religious zealot is coming to me. I had directed him. No, he had seen a Shakespeare play that I had directed in Seattle, a King Lear, and he was like, "I like you. I think you share the values of this organization. Really grounded in like poetry, language, like these plays that we love, and how they kind of carve their way into your heart." And he was like, "I love the way that you work on this play. You need to meet this tribe out here at APT." And he made it. Unfortunately, he sold it. It was kind of like a cult.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
He was like, and I was
weird.
like, where are we?
Who are they, and why are they?
And so I came out here. I think I was in this room when I was invited to a couple of parties, and I kept sort of waiting for the interview, and I would go to your house, and then we would go to the Shed, a local bar down the street, and I kept being introduced to these people and talking to them. And it was early in my career, and I hadn't, I understood like getting a job is like you pitch for it, or somebody basically says, we saw your work, we hire you. So at the end of it, I think I may have turned to you and said like, is there going to be an interview? And you kind of put your hand on me and you're like, oh, there was. There was. Yes. You've been being interviewed the whole time, And I think at one time, I think I was nervous, and I think Dara at some point like put his hand on the top of my beer, and he was like, just chill out for a little while. Like,
don't drink anymore.
He was like, just for a second,
Just everyone's watching.
Yeah.
Maybe no more beer. And you're like, oh,
right. Yes, that's okay, good.
Well, because the whole thing is about, now that you've been here, the whole thing is about, it's not even about, once someone like Dara comes and says, who I trust implicitly, right? Says, this is the guy. And it doesn't do that very often, right? This is the guy, a guy you really need to know, Brent. And you have that kind of, then you come in, and it's not about how great your work is anymore, because I trust that it's going to be, of a standard that we are interested in. And when we talked about poetry, you said all the right things, and we just talked casually about all the stuff. But it's about your interactions with the people.
Yeah, it's for real, because I'd never been to a place that was so connected. Everybody here is so connected with one another. I remember sitting in my first APT audience, and how generous they were. And I was like under steady light outside and wondering like, when's the play going to begin?
Right.
And people start spinning this beautiful language, and the audience is like, they're just right there catching it all.
Yeah.
But I think that's because they have developed a long-term relationship with language, with these stories, and particularly with these actors. And so I just remember, I think it was Arms and the Man.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
And Colleen caught on fire that night.
Oh, I remember that. I wasn't there that night. Oh, I was there that night. We went backstage. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she caught on fire. There was an open candle on stage.
Yep.
She got very close to it. And someone in the front row, a great audience member who clearly loved this theater, stood up and was like, "You're on fire!" And we were all like, what's happening? And Colleen, just so charming, like turned around, patted out her dress, kind of smiled, curtsied to the audience, and kind of moved forward. And I was like, this place is, you could just feel, even in that like, tiny little moment, how it sort of takes care of each other.
When did you know you wanted to come back? Like you came and did that first show, which was extraordinary. And you like went all in. Well, you always go all in, but young John going all in was a whole different...
What are you saying?
I'm just saying you chilled a little bit. Your all in is a little bit more, I don't know. It's a little bit more like a hug that gets really tight as opposed to like a squeeze. Coming, I don't know.
I buy that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're, undeniable passion about every choice you're making. That'd be above the title for you. Like no one's ever going to say you didn't care about a choice, whether it's the cups or it's you're going to care about every choice. So yeah, you were extraordinary in that kind of attention and moment to moment acting, which might be a thing to talk about. You're really interested in how the moments all connect together.
Yeah, I do. I feel like
is she get in? Jax is walking around on the table here.
Hi, Jax.
Hi, Jax.
talking about moment to moment, I always feel like I say to the actors a lot, we're just preparing to play, because there is an energy that triangulates when an audience is sitting there pulling a scene out of the actors, right? And so we need to rehearse so that we're available to the spontaneity that occurs in that moment, I think. And so what we look for, I think, in rehearsal is is the thing happening between two people? Is the game set up right so people can know what they are trying to get done, and they can get on stage and feel free to get that done in a million different ways? Right. But I think cultivating the energy and the space between is like everything for me. And when it's crackling, there's nothing like it, because I think, I'm working with Jimmy DeVita now. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's amazing. And we're working on this show, and we're watching waves of inspiration kind of come through, which is what we're there to catch, really. And there's great storytelling and great craft, but there is the moment that we all go to the theater for, which is like, I don't know. I've said this before, and I'm not a religious person, but it's like you craft a good machine so God can come through, right? If the machine is good, on any given moment, you catch a spirit or a wave, and something really inspired happens.
Muse.
Yeah, the Muse.
The Muse.
Yeah. We talk a lot about the Muse in an Iliad.
But something that I always think about it when I'm watching that happen between actors, it feels like it is being, you're watching something birth. You're watching something come alive. You're watching something originate, new, right in front of you. And why live theater is different than everything else is that, right, there's always the possibility you don't know, because they don't know exactly what's going to happen next. And so the what's happened next, the lean into like what's going to happen next, is, if that is crackling, is very obvious, even if an audience doesn't really know, but the actors certainly know. People use sports metaphors all the time. Like, they're in the zone.
Yes.
All of a sudden somebody's just shooting threes, and in practice they couldn't hit one. So what is that energy that you are witnessing and catching and giving back? I've watched Brian in Improbable Fiction throughout this entire run just play, because he knows that guy. He knows what he needs to get done. Right?
Yep.
The more those people know, like you said, what they need to get done, the more freedom they have to and you can feel it.
Oh yeah.
Always.
And you try to design for it, right? You design to catch it.
Yep.
I think that's our work in rehearsal, is how do we set ourselves up so that we have the best chance of catching that every night.
Yeah, the higher percentage of that, the more people say, that's a great show, and they don't exactly know why.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So in my interviews with everybody, in the 6 Feet Apart interviews, I asked a question. Now, this may not be the way that you remember this, John, but in my memory, and I was young, early hiring directors at that point, and you had done Misalliance, and I came back to talk to you about coming back. And, as thoughtful as you always are, and as intense, I think you grabbed my knee, and you like squeezed it, and you're like, yeah, I think so. I had an amazing time. You're really complimentary, per you, and really gracious, and you said, yeah, I just had to think back. It's like walking through fire working here.
Yeah.
It's like burning your skin off working here. And I was like,
it's so dramatic, but yes.
No, if anybody knows John, the imagery is always how he speaks. So everyone believes me that you said this, by the way. So, because I can imagine.
Oh, I said it. There's no doubt. Let's just be clear. That's what it felt like. Yes.
So can you what did that mean? I think I understood exactly what it meant. What did it mean to you, or what do you think it meant?
Well, there are layers of rigor that are promoted by a work ethic that's been developed for years. There's an intensity to, like, I feel like I'm an intense person, but I felt like I couldn't keep up when I was here the first time. The rigor of like working on the language, and then God, I just also. There is a collective intensity about like excellence, which is awesome, and also sometimes
intimidating.
Yeah, because you're trying to sort of, you know, I always think about the work of the artist is to like move your internal bar of excellence and like never look back and think that where you were was as good as you can be once the bar is moved, right?
Raise the
and
bar.
I felt like everybody was asking themselves and me to lift that bar up in so many different ways. And it was so wonderfully challenging. And I also think, you know, you asked me to do a Shaw play. I don't know why. I had never directed a Shaw play, and I think why you asked me to do it was because I said it scares me.
Yep.
And I think I have learned that that is also like a signpost for an artist. Like if you're afraid, that's where you need to be.
Yep.
So all of those things came together. The quiet of being out in a small town, you have to face yourself. Spring Green is this incredible village, but there are times when all you have out here is just quiet and yourself.
Yeah.
And that was also like, oh God, do I want to hang out with that person? You know? And so I think for all of those reasons, and I loved that show. And
I did too.
I'd never worked harder on anything. I loved that cast.
That cast was brilliant, and the show was brilliant. And when I can remember perfect images, if I can remember where Tracy was standing for that, where Carrie Coon was for that, where I can remember vividly how vivid it was, and still in my memory that I knew you were. And I have to say, all your work strikes, because it's also, you know, you always try to challenge us visually. We try to bring it back to like, maybe we just think about listening to stories, and that's always really hard because we know it's a good push and pull always.
Yeah.
But it's because the visual is never ever overtaken the heart or the center or the person and what's happening. So the visual is almost always in support. I mean, as best as any of us can get, in support of that story being imprinted. So I want to talk a little bit about, because I think you'll have something really interesting for the audience to understand. It's really easy for those of us that are here to talk about things that we think we understand and we value. But there's a thing you said about the people raising the bar in the room, and that can feel like, you know, terrifying to people. But how do you think APT is different about, and not always successful? I get it, not always successful, but like trying to create that room where that's okay for you to ask each other questions about how to raise that bar. It's okay for there to be a dialogue. I mean, because a lot of things are excellent because someone comes in and says they're an auteur and they know what they're doing and they want you to just do what you're told.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the way you work.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the way we. Certainly not my hope is that's not the way we ever.
No, not at all. I don't think that the desire that led to the feeling of like, am I good enough? Which is not a bad feeling. It wasn't like self-doubt. It was like, gosh, I want to be better. Comes from trust, right? It comes from the fact that people trust each other enough, or they do the work to earn the trust, that then you say, yeah, I want to listen to your ideas. I want to listen to your thoughts. So I think APT's grown this way.
Yeah, me too.
The idea of like, it's not a scary thing because, you know, we've had each other's back through the small moments. So when a big moment comes along,
right,
that you're saying like, I don't think this is working. What can we do? Which feels like in a moment where you're building a piece of art, that's a tricky moment, right?
Yeah, because they have to do it.
Because you have to do it.
If you don't come up with a better answer, they're going to have to do the thing you've already told them doesn't, or something you aren't quite sure. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
You enter that idea in the room.
Yeah, and so I think that, you know, your artistic team, who are there to challenge and support, like, you've earned my trust, you know, like, and that's a lot of, because you know, you come with a lot of compassion and a lot of grace, and not just for me particular, but when I see it, like, all over the place, then we all trust it. So I think that's what is unique and what has grown. I think we were all a little intense when we started.
Oh yeah,
I think we were
I
all
was
like
super intense.
We're like,
this is terrible. What are we gonna do about this?
Yeah, I mean,
John,
I remember. I feel like you pulled me off the road in at the golf course, and you're like, and I was like, what's happening? And you're like, listen, we have to talk about act 2, scene 3, and I was like, we do right now. We're gonna do that,
I did. Oh my God, I remember the lights came over. You told that story later to Jimmy. He's like, I don't know her. I mean, he was literally like, I am so sorry about her.
I think I called my wife, and when I was like, yeah, so I had a drive-by with the artistic director. It was awesome. But we were intense, and
we did note sessions till 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, we would go through, because you're my kind of guy that you're gonna like talk about it. Like, you're not afraid to say when something's not quite, because you're always greedy. I remember the first time you said that in a rehearsal, that you were greedy for more, because it would, like, I thought it was going well, but yeah, you're right. Many times my job is to come in and say, I don't know, I can't see what you're doing, or I'm not buying that, or you said this is what this is, and I'm not getting that story at all over here. And then you start to, then you want to know why, and then you're so curious.
Yeah. I feel
just burning with curiosity.
Yeah, I think that is, and I also think it has to mellow, right? Like,
we'd all burn out.
Yeah, I mean, I run a theater now, and I do your job in for artistic people, and your hunger has to is only as good as it inspires somebody and doesn't shut them down. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is true of directors, and I think it's doubly true of artistic directors. It's been such a pleasure. I think we took our positions at the same time.
It's been.
I know.
The number of times you're calling, like, John, do you have a minute?
I know. I have leaned on your experience, and it's just great to have a colleague who you grew up with, and I do think that is both with the audience and the actors here, one of the things about APT that's so unique is this community has grown up together, and you feel it. You really feel it when you're, and I think this community makes great art. It's not just the artist. It's the hunger of a community who comes to hear stories.
Yep, hear stories. Yeah. And that listening is the key.
So my first moment of an Iliad this year was a read-through, and there's this incredibly dense passage where the poet, played by Jimmy DeVita, is talking about war, and he expresses this incredibly complicated parenthetical thought about how a war is like a storm, and he is able to hold this 5-page parenthetical thought and get you back to the main event of the speech. And I'm listening to it, I'm like, that does not happen without years of work and attention to detail. And what an incredible treat it is to, be in the presence of somebody who's put in the work and taken it to a level where you're like, wow, that's a lifetime of rigor.
Yeah, I think that scares people, rigor. I think that it can scare some people that it's not beneficial or beneficial to them. I think it's a personal choice, right? We always say this place is a little bit for the masochists. And I wish that it wasn't actually true, but I do think there are people who really love working on something and the craft of something and failing at it and learning how to do it better. And there are people who really just like that. They just got that makeup. Mm-hmm. And then there are people who that completely sinks them creatively to be that thinking that hard about the thing they're trying to build. And I don't have any I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you think that that's true, or do you think rigor is always good?
I think you have to be rigorous about relaxation. I mean, I don't know. It's your point of reference. I think you have to. I really feel like, as a young person, I worked myself, sacrificed a lot of things in my life, made a lot of mistakes because this art in general will take everything you give it. It will eat everything.
Yep.
If you give it everything. And at some point, adulting, yes.
It will take everything.
I think adulting means you got to choose how you want to live outside of the art. You choose love. You choose a partner that you are willing to grow and nurture with, and that takes patience and time and a focus that isn't as it needs you to sort of turn down the all-consuming focus of art to choose a life.
A life.
Yeah, and I think that I also think that's something that APT has made space for a lot of people. Like, yes, you do have to have a kind of like intense mental focus and appetite to want to work on this kind of work outdoors, sometimes in 80-degree heat.
Mosquitoes.
In a rotating repertory theater, wearing cold packs some days, like all of that stuff. That does feel like you need emotional athletes, like people who are really willing to train. But I also think our culture, and certainly APT's culture, is understanding that if you want those people to be at their best, what else can you do for them to provide them safety in terms of like job security, proper and adequate like artist-centered rest that we're all talking about now. Because I think we just woke up this year and said like, how can we live our lives better in this time?
Yeah. I mean, my kids would say that, that's generational potentially or whatever, but this idea, I do think boundaries around the rigor, like boundaries around the intensity, boundaries around how much it consumes. Like, don't let it take all of it. Figure out as you, and especially as we're aging. But I really respect that conversation, that tension of, we have to figure out what is the balance of things. And people talk about balance all the time, but balance out here is just a completely different discussion.
Yeah.
Kelsey Brennan says, it's an Olympic athlete. I feel like I am an athlete. I feel like I have trained, and not everybody wants to be that. I mean, and still it doesn't mean it's just not, it's what we do. It's what they do. It's not noble. It's what they choose to do. It's what feeds them in a way. And I want to make sure that we make space for people who want that and still have a great idea about balance that maybe some of us didn't and haven't had.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, I think the two of us could have had many a conversation about that. As
At
how
like 4 o'clock in the morning, being like, we have a rehearsal in like 4 hours, but let's like talk through that little. Yeah.
Like, where's the? But I loved it. I loved it. It wasn't like it was burdensome at the moment.
Maybe. Yeah, not at all.
I don't know. But I want to ask you, and we could talk. So this is the thing. John and I could talk forever.
Yeah, we could do that.
About really fun, interesting things to us. I hope this is interesting to you. So I just want to ask you. I want to ask you this. So we just talked about some of the things you're proud of as far as APT, and I really appreciate the generosity when you speak about APT, and you are APT. I mean, that's.
Thank you. I felt like I grew up here, so in a huge way.
I mean, I could cry. So I'm not, but I did. I mean, you are. Like, you just get it, and you've always gotten it, and you've always contributed, and you've shaped our art. You've risen, the bar has gone up, and we go, okay, it can be better, and John's going to show us some of that. I mean, I think about so many of your productions. It'd be unfair to pick one, but I'm going to make you.
Oh boy.
I'm just going to make you pick, like, what are you most proud of as far as your work is concerned at APT?
I mean, that first show, Misalliance, for me, because I was so out of my element, and I can remember laying on a couch every spare minute with that script in my hand and trying to figure it out, and that shaped me. I was being asked, by wonderful, I think it was Susan Sweeney who was coaching that.
She's brilliant at Shaw as well, yes.
Also just the
it's a voice and text coach, Susan Sweeney.
Oh, Susan. But the idea of owning, like, where you can take language, if you're, as a director, how you can help shape a process that really focuses on language. So that show for me, somehow the Seagull, for me, that production was blessed with something.
Yeah, it was.
It just, something sailed over. I mean, they were all, it's like, picking children, right?
Right, absolutely.
But somehow we got and we made a lot of mistakes on that production. I remember we had to turn the whole act one around in the last minute, but something just, every step we were taking felt like we were getting to the core of it.
Yep.
I mean, that last production of Midsummers was just beautiful and glorious.
That was the production I asked you to open our new space. I asked John to open our new space. Yeah. That's enough said. I said I want you to do that Midsummer on that space.
I think you asked me to do it twice because I think we opened the Touchstone with Jimmy's show.
Yeah.
And so
well, that tells you how much I trust John.
But also, this is like a relationship with an actor like Jimmy. Like, we've done 2 one-person shows together. He's been in larger shows. Like, we've done shows now at Milwaukee Rep. He has come out to Seattle because I wanted, the representation. I mean, this is going to sound, look, I'm owning it. Like, I'm talking to Jimmy's wife.
Which is really awkward, right?
It's not super awkward, but it
is what it is.
It is what it is. All I want to say is that relationship for me is core and key in my life and just to growing as an artist.
I know, you're his work wife. I work with Jimmy and he's his work wife.
Yeah, so I feel like the having a artist partner like that, I think a lot of the core for me feel in my heart so deeply, like they're, and I started a core company in Seattle who are now like we're family,
Yeah.
And I understood that concept from being here, that you're just going to put in your lifetime, you get an opportunity to put your chips down on a certain amount of people, and you don't choose them; they kind of choose you. And if you walk in service to like the art that you can make, these are the relationships are like. Because art is fickle and it doesn't need you. It doesn't need any individual. It'll move by you quickly. It's all ephemera. But after a lifetime, and I'm living in housing right now. I'm in Ken Alber's place. And Ken passed recently, and there are pictures all over the walls of the art that he made. And it's a little like living in a mausoleum, I'll be honest, but it's fortifying, and a lifetime of an artist and played out through pictures. And we did a lot of shows together. So a representation of our relationship is part of this strange apartment I'm living in.
He created artists.
Yeah.
He didn't just create art. He created.
Yeah.
He built. He helped people find themselves.
Yeah.
And understand their responsibility to the art, to themselves. And I watched him do it with numerous humans on Earth. And it's so funny that he comes up in every one of these interviews, unprompted.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That to me is like the definition of like real legacy, and that's what I think, ultimately, what I think I am most proud of ultimately is not any individual show. I started this interview by talking about moments, and I think if you're lucky, you collect like a string of pearls, these moments of theater, and they can be as simple as 2 actors putting their arms around each other and walking upstairs, and you're like, that's authentic. That feels like we did something, so that's what you get from the art. But what you get from a life in the art are these relationships and growing together. And it's weird. Like, I turn 50 very soon, and I just like you really start like that. You start to think of, when I leave this vale of tears, what have I done? What a bummer.
You've
What
done,
a bummer.
You've done a
What
lot.
bummer
No,
thought.
no, you said it beautifully. You speaking my language. I don't get how great art is great if the humans aren't working on greatness. And I've never believed, honestly, that they're separate. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't mean everybody that works here, everybody that works in the theater, everybody works is a great actor, is a great person. I just mean, I think you feel when someone is striving for authenticity, for truth, and walk on stage with that same kind of, they're just working on something else. Mm-hmm. And that's why people compare live theater or art to religion in some ways, because it becomes about the excavation of you. Mm-hmm. And if you're being thorough and honest, and why you have always been the go-to is that I have never felt you hold back or blame or push unnecessarily, or you just are always yourself. You're always authentic. I believe you. I think you're clear. I trust you. And you showed up like that because you were working on asking yourself the hard things as you were asking other people. And when you were not doing well, it would show up, you know, mm-hmm. in what you were doing and how you were trying to work this out, mm-hmm. out here, mm-hmm. and vice versa. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I know what I mean by that.
Yeah, I think you're talking about like you I was talking to Gavin the other day, and a reflection of his Orsino was built on heartbreak, personal heartbreak. Mm-hmm. And to have the craft to say like, this is present for me. And I am going to, I have the opportunity as an artist to sort of craft what this feeling is and maybe exercise it, and maybe learn something about it. That I think is what you're talking about when you say curiosity too. Mm-hmm. This Iliad for me right now, we're coming out of 15 months and losing 600,000 people. We have not been able to mourn them. I've been to 3 Zoom funerals, you know, and to really think about telling a story in the face of this is so different than telling a story 6 years ago when we told it. And so the curiosity is like, you know, where will this story be received now?
Mm-hmm. And how will it land?
Yeah.
And who is it landing? Who's there to receive? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they bring now? It's beautiful. It's a joy of my life to watch that. One of the joys of my life to watch that iterations of these things and the growth between you and the poet, Jim and Jimmy, and inside that character. It shows up where you guys are at, shows up in that story.
I had this image the other day of like, you know, skipping a rock over a pond, like, and like for the Iliad, like first production, the rock's in the air, but the water changes under it. So where are you tapping down? Second production, 6 years ago, we're up in the air again. Now we have the water's completely changed. Like, it would be very interesting.
Yep, I know.
This is not a pitch.
No, but I know.
To just see,
I thought
like, where the artist is, because that text is so rich and it needs, it's like the hokey pokey, you put your whole self in, right? you cannot do that play without your whole self in. To just see where the water is, if we should be fortunate enough to do it again. You know?
Yeah, I thought about it too. I said, we'll have to sit in a chair for that one, probably.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you let him sit in a chair.
Do you know, like,
just for a minute during the show?
The wonder of living a life in the art is that you do gather a kind of gravitas. And, you know, you've seen the great artists, the masters at the end, they can sit in a chair for an hour and a half.
Ken could sit in a chair.
He did.
I've seen him.
Long day's journey in the night. He was like, this is my chair. We're not going to move a lot here.
One last question.
Yes.
Actually 2, but I just want to say. Okay, quick.
Yep.
What's your favorite word?
Oh boy.
Go, quick.
Yes, my favorite word to this, verisimilitude.
It's actually, I tried to say it this morning and couldn't, so thanks.
This week, it's verisimilitude.
Yeah. And I know why. And what is your least favorite word?
Regret.
Okay. Little John, what do you say to, I know you have 2 little, I know you're not little anymore.
Yes.
Yes, your children are not all little anymore, but, so talk to me. You see John.
Yeah.
What would you say to him?
Yeah, you're going to learn the most from when you screw up.
Yeah, beep, beep. You're going to learn the most.
You're going to learn the most, so don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it.
Yep, I agree.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because
It's where the money is.
It's,
It's where the thing happens.
yeah, that was, I have a road trip planned with my 11-year-old, and we're talking about that a lot.
Captain. His 11-year-old's named Captain.
Yes.
Yeah, I love you.
I love you too.
Easy. Easy peasy. Thanks.
Thank you.